So Fallout 76's latest update was one of the biggest. It went live on this past Tuesday for PC and this past Thursday for Xbox One and PS4. Obviously it wasn't the biggest in file size, one of those first updates was pretty massive, but what it did do was actually contain quite a large list of changes and improvements to the game, and a lot of these were really nice changes, things we had been waiting for, in addition to some quality of life changes. Yet it seems like with this update in particular, especially when compared to some of the past ones, there was a lot of changes that maybe weren't as intended. Several additional bugs and glitches were added to the game, and these aren't like those one-off things that are under super rare use cases, but actually fairly abundant and common. I'm making this video for two main reasons. One, to actually bring some awareness about these. A few of them have been talked about quite widely. A few of the other ones haven't really been talked about too widely. And even beyond that, I think it's just kind of interesting and somewhat funny, especially now the fact that you could kind of get a robot army or fight a robot army. So let's start with that one, the new Fallout 76 feature of the White Spring Robot Army. So I'm not really sure what happened with this one, but at least on PC, when you now go to the White Springs Resort, you're going to notice there's quite a few extra robots. And by quite a few, I mean you could probably get it to be up to hundreds of robots as you hang out here for longer. It seems like it's only affecting the Mr. Handies as well as the Protectrons. The Sentry Bots or Assaultrons are not duplicating as quickly. And yeah, as you explore throughout, you'll realize that there's a lot of freaking robots here. It actually can be kind of useful because if you lure some enemies in, you can have quite the big fight. But otherwise, a lot of people are reporting that if they hang out here or even in the area where this is loaded, there will be continuous spawns of robots and eventually lead to massive lag spikes or even server crashes. It doesn't really seem like there's a way to command your robot army, but I know a lot of people are probably curious, and yes, you can fight them. It is quite the difficult fight because halfway through this, you'll realize a lot of the robots start respawning. But honestly, as long as this glitch exists, it is a half decent way to farm experience. Things respawn extremely quickly, and it's probably one of the biggest clusters of NPCs you could find. A lot of them give very few experience, but they die in basically one shot. And there are a couple of those level 50 to 60 enemies sprinkled in. Although one oddity among this, as you actually go throughout the White Springs with all of these robots, you'll notice a few of them are dead. I don't really know what's killing them. There was no enemies around, but yeah, every once in a while, it's like a few get sacrificed to the gods to make sure more can spawn. But it seems like this spawning glitch goes even further than just these robots. Apparently in a bunch of other locations, people are reporting that they'll clear out a location and halfway through clearing it out, or just after they finish clearing it out, all of the enemies will instantly respawn. I've noticed this somewhat in addition to a few other oddities where it's like enemies will level up or evolve or something at the sacrifice of other enemies around them. Like there'll be a couple of low level enemies and all of a sudden a bunch of higher level enemies will spawn right next to them. Or even other times, I'll be clearing through an area and I'll take down all the low-level enemies, but then on the other side, a bunch of high-level enemies start spawning in, making the fight considerably more difficult. And I guess this technically could be viewed as an alternative tactic to get people to stay in the game longer, because it's going to take significantly longer to clear out some of these locations. Another particularly funny one that seems rather random is actually a glitch affecting Phoenix. Phoenix is one of the Brotherhood of Steel traders that you can find in Watoga. It seems like he's some sort of repurposed responders trader that the Brotherhood of Steel took over. I'm not really sure about the backstory. Either way, many of you have probably interacted or traded with him, but it seems like Phoenix has began to go off route. Basically, he keeps exiting his little store, and some people, including myself, find him fighting other Protectrons. If you've ever been to Watoga, you'll know that there are a plethora of various kinds of robots here and often a lot of combat going on in general. And I guess Phoenix, after a month of listening, wanted a piece of that action. The interesting part though is he doesn't always fight. Other times, after switching servers and trying to see what was causing this, I found him just wandering around when enemies are around. It seems like the presence of enemies causes him to go off script, but sometimes he'll just hide and cower away. Other times he'll take them on head on. The funny part being though, he is essential, so he can't be damaged or killed, so you could kind of just keep bringing enemies to him and he will continuously take them down. I've also noticed a bunch of other oddities just in his behavior and how he's shooting some of his lasers, but if you need some help clearing out Watoga, it seems like Phoenix might actually be a fairly viable solution to that. One of the rather unfortunate and not so funny byproducts of this patch is server lag and server crashing. So it seems like there's two main causes of this. First and foremost, the obvious White Springs glitch. Pretty much when everyone's in the vicinity of White Springs and you have all of these additional robots or even fighting them, the server itself seems to have some lag issues. That coupled with some of the other respawn oddities I talked about in this video seem to make it so you'll experience significantly more lag. But even beyond that, there's actually another dupe glitch. And there's a bunch of people reporting that when people are using this dupe glitch, you can immediately notice server lag as somebody connects or disconnects with all of those items in their inventory. I have certainly noticed more lag after this update, whether it be trying to loot containers or actually switch things between my stash. And for me at least, crashing and server disconnects are definitely on the rise. But let's say you get pretty frustrated. Your server crashes and you're just like, you know what, I'm done. Well, actually with this latest version of the game, you can't quit, or at least not nearly as easy as you could previously. And I'm not entirely sure as to how many people this is affecting, but I've seen numerous people that I know playing on PC that cannot leave the game and it just kind of exit in a normal fashion. When using the traditional quit to desktop option, you actually can't close the game. It will be like halfway in the process of closing, and oftentimes you'll just get a black screen, but otherwise it's frozen there. And it's not like this is every once in a while. No, it's every single time I try and quit Fallout 76, this happens. It's typically very frustrating, especially for those of us that don't remember to put Task Manager as always staying on top. So you'll carefully have to navigate this. And I know of numerous people that say they're just turning off their PC when they're done with playing the game. But you might be like, oh, of course, there's an easy fix, just Alt F4. And yes, that would close the game, except after doing that, when you go into Bethesda's launcher, you'll realize it says the game's still playing. But this one's a little bit more complicated. For whatever reason, with Fallout 76, when you Alt F4 the game, it actually won't show it in the Task Manager as a process. The way you do get it to show up is to close or exit Bethesda's launcher. Then suddenly it'll appear and you can end the process. Honestly, this has been a very frustrating issue, just not being able to exit the game when you're done with it. But hey, if Bethesda wants people to play this game for longer, having a big deterrent to exiting it is probably a good solution there. I've talked in a previous video how apparently there's some kind of forced trade exploit where basically people can initiate a trade with you. You have to accept it though, but then can set the prices of those items to 0 and effectively take them from you for free. The counter of this, of course, being don't accept trades from strangers. Honestly, a good life rule in general. So yeah, it's pretty interesting how this update in particular has brought about so many of these additional bugs and glitches. It seems rather odd because if you look at the patch notes and what bugs or changes were actually made to the game, it doesn't seem like any of those would obviously cause so many of these glitches. It's not like they were messing around with spawn rates or even closing or exiting the game, but obviously something got modified. Again, I wanted to make this video to bring attention to some of these. I know sometimes people feel like they're the only ones experiencing these bugs, but if you saw it in this video, you're definitely not alone. And even beyond that, hopefully Bethesda will get these fixed in the coming patch. They have mentioned how they're shooting for a patch this Tuesday, but the way they worded it, it seemed like they were very unsure, so there'll likely be one before the end of the year, probably this coming week, but now we have to hope they actually get patched in time, because otherwise it doesn't seem like the next update will be until January. Otherwise though, it's pretty much going to wrap it up for the Fallout side of this video. Hopefully you guys found this video informative or even just funny. But otherwise, we're going to have today's psychology fun fact of the day, and this one's going to be kind of with a bonus, and it's going to be about make sure your grades are right, or don't feel bad questioning your grades. I suppose this predominantly applies to people in college who get your grades through like some kind of online portal, or you get them digitally. Very rarely, I feel like in college, do you actually get to see your tests back. And well, at one point in my undergrad career, the day before the final nonetheless, I got my test grade for test 2. This was a class where you just had 3 tests. That was your entire grade. So the night before the final, I finally get this grade, and lo and behold, it's a 50. Now I'm doing the math and I'm like, all right, I could get 100 on this final and I will still get a C. To make a long story short, basically they forgot to add my part 2 on, and it wasn't actually a 50. I don't remember the real grade, but something much higher than that. The problem was I got my grade almost a month after taking the test, so I didn't really remember. Maybe I did actually get a 50. Either way, had I never sent an email and inquired, I would have never got that better grade. And just yesterday in another class I had, they actually had to recall the final grades because numerous people had very incorrect grades. Now for me, who had a good grade, I'm kind of paranoid now because I'm like, wait, was that the real grade? But either way, just in general life pro tip, you should always question your grades if you feel like something might be off. Most times it can't really hurt. But then to build off that for today's psychology fun fact, I actually want to talk about stress. So there's this thing known as the general adaptation syndrome. It's basically the theory about how stress applies to your body. According to this, it is a 3-stage process starting with alarm. That's how you actually recognize the stress and your body begins its physiological response. Then you move on to resistance, where your body remains alert and aroused and it starts releasing some of those hormones, specifically cortisol is the hormone released here. But then you may get to the third stage where problems may actually arise, that known as exhaustion. And this is where basically your anti-stress systems are overworked and they begin to break down. So a couple of interesting takeaways from this. You could actually get to that exhaustion stage just from what are known as daily hassles. Micro stressors that occur every single day, like getting stuck on a long line, having to wait in traffic, things like that can really build up and affect you more so than actually like a major life event like a death in your family. People who undergo periods where there's a lot of micro stressors may actually get ill because the release of cortisol breaks down your immune system. That's not like an opinion or a theory, but having a lot of stress over a long period of time makes you more susceptible to getting sick. And a lot of people just assume that probably has to do with some of those major and tragic life events, but no, in reality, daily hassles can actually play a pretty big role in your life. Keeping those in mind, keeping those in the back of your head about how to live healthier and a little bit more stress-free is important. But yeah, it's pretty much going to wrap it up for this video. Hopefully you guys are having a good time during finals week, if that's possible. I imagine a lot of you guys who had finals already are wrapping it up because today's going to be the last day, and I'm sure there's the other batch of you who are just getting started. For those of you in that case, I'm sorry. But either way, as always, again, I thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you all next time. Later.